My name is Linda, and I am 52 years old now. But the story I am about to tell you happened when I was 35, living what I thought was a peaceful life in Columbus, Ohio. That afternoon, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. When I answered, I heard my 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, sobbing on the other end. "Mom, help me." They left me and took my cousin. My heart stopped. I immediately called my mother. She picked up laughing. "Oh, sorry. We forgot her. LOL. In the background, I could hear my sister Jessica laughing too, but they had no idea what was coming. Before I tell you how I made them regret that day for the rest of their lives, let me know where you are joining me from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe, because this story will show you exactly what happens when a mother's patience finally runs out. You will not want to miss what happened next. I was 35 years old, married to David, a wonderful man who worked as an IT engineer. We had one daughter, Sophie, who was 8 years old at the time. She was in 3rd grade, a sweet and sensitive child who tried so hard to please everyone around her. I worked as a marketing manager at a small company, and we lived a simple, happy life. Or at least that was what I thought. My relationship with my birth family had always been complicated. My mother, Margaret, was 62 years old and had retired a few years earlier. She had a controlling personality and always needed to be in charge of everything. My father, George, was 65 and mostly stayed quiet, going along with whatever my mother decided. Then there was my older sister, Jessica. She was 38, 3 years older than me, and had always been the golden child in our family. Jessica had divorced 3 years before this story took place and moved back to live near our parents with her daughter, Ashley. Ashley was also 8 years old, the same age as Sophie. After Jessica's divorce, my mother stepped in to help her in every way possible. She watched Ashley almost every day, gave Jessica money when she needed it, helped with groceries, paid for Ashley's activities. Everything Jessica needed, our mother provided. David and I, on the other hand, had been independent from the start. We bought our own house, paid our own bills, and never asked my parents for financial help. I thought that was normal. I thought we were just being responsible adults, but I did not realize that my independence would become a reason for resentment. The favoritism started becoming obvious after Sophie was born. I noticed that Ashley always got new expensive clothes and toys. Sophie received hand-me-downs from Ashley or cheap gifts that looked like afterthoughts. When it was Ashley's birthday, Margaret threw big parties with lots of guest decorations and presents piled high. When it was Sophie's birthday, we got a simple dinner and maybe 1 or 2 small gifts. Margaret constantly praised Ashley. Ashley is so smart, so pretty, so talented, she would say, her eyes shining with pride. When it came to Sophie, the compliments were different. Sophie is okay. She is a good girl. That was it. Just okay. Just good. Never special. Never exceptional. I tried not to compare. I told myself that every grandmother had her own way of showing love. But Sophie was starting to notice. I could see it in her eyes when Ashley got something new and she did not. I could hear it in her voice when she asked why Grandma never asked what she wanted. David saw it too. He would get frustrated watching how my mother treated our daughter. "Linda, this is not right," he would say. But I always made excuses. "She is just closer to Jessica because Jessica needs more help. She will come around." I kept hoping that if I stayed patient, if I kept bringing Sophie to visit eventually, my mother would see how wonderful my daughter was. I was wrong. The week before the incident, Margaret called me. It was unusual because she rarely reached out to invite Sophie to anything. "We are taking Ashley to the state park for a picnic this Saturday," she said. "Sophie can come too if she wants." I was surprised. My mother had not invited Sophie to anything in months. Maybe this was a sign that things were changing. Maybe she was finally making an effort to include both girls equally. Sophie was over the moon when I told her. "Mom, can I go?" "Please," she begged, her face lighting up with excitement. "Of course, sweetie," I said, hugging her. "You are going to have so much fun." David was less enthusiastic. "Are you sure about this?" he asked that night after Sophie went to bed. "Your mother does not exactly have a great track record." "Maybe she is trying," I said, wanting to believe it. Maybe this is her way of making things better. Saturday morning arrived. Margaret and George came to pick up Sophie at 9 o'clock. Jessica and Ashley were already in the car. Sophie had her little backpack ready, packed with the sandwich I made her and a water bottle. I walked her to the car and she climbed into the back seat next to Ashley. "Please call me if anything happens," I said to my mother through the car window. "And make sure Sophie eats her lunch." "Of course," Margaret said with a smile. "Do not worry about a thing." Sophie waved goodbye to us, her eyes bright with happiness. I watched the car drive away, and a strange feeling settled in my stomach. Something felt off, but I could not put my finger on what it was. "She will be fine," David said, putting his arm around my shoulders. "Your parents would not let anything happen to her." I nodded, trying to push away the unease. We went inside and spent the morning cleaning the house and catching up on chores. By noon, I started wondering how things were going. I sent a text to my mother. "How is Sophie doing?" No response. An hour passed. Still nothing. I called her phone. It rang and rang, but no one picked up. I tried my father's number. Same thing. Then I called Jessica. Her phone went straight to voicemail. David noticed me getting anxious. "Maybe they are just having fun and forgot to check their phones," he suggested. But I knew my mother. She always had her phone with her. She was constantly texting and checking Facebook. Why would she ignore my calls? At 2:30 in the afternoon, my phone finally rang. But it was not my mother's number. It was a number I did not recognize. I picked up immediately. "Hello?" The first thing I heard was Sophie crying. Not just crying, sobbing. The kind of desperate, heartbroken sobbing that makes every parent's blood run cold. "Mom. Mom. Help me!" she screamed into the phone. My heart felt like it stopped beating. "Sophie. Baby. What is wrong? Where are you?" Sophie was crying so hard she could not speak. Then I heard another voice. A woman's voice I did not recognize. "Hello? Is this Sophie's mother?" "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "What happened? Where is my daughter?" The woman's voice was kind but concerned. "I found her alone at the picnic area in the state park. She said her family left without her." I felt the room spin. "Left her? What do you mean, left her?" "She says she went to the bathroom, and when she came back, they were gone." I could not breathe. I could not think. My baby was alone with a stranger because my family had abandoned her. "Where exactly are you?" I asked, already grabbing my car keys. The woman, whose name was Karen, gave me the exact location. I told her I would be there in 30 minutes and begged her to stay with Sophie until I arrived. David was already heading for the door. "Let's go," he said, his face pale. But first I had to make another call. I had to know if this was real. I had to hear it from them. I called my mother's number. This time she picked up on the second ring. "Oh, hi, Linda," she said, her voice light and casual, like nothing was wrong. "What is up?" "What is up?" I could barely control my voice. "You left Sophie. How could you do this?" There was a pause. Then I heard it, the sound that would change everything between us forever. My mother laughed. "Oh, sorry, we forgot her. LOL, I heard the letters. LOL, like this was a joke. Like leaving my 8-year-old daughter alone in a park was funny. Forgot I was screaming now, not caring who heard. You forgot my daughter. She is 8 years old. She went to the bathroom and took forever," Margaret said, still sounding unconcerned. "We thought she was in the car. When we got home, we realized she wasn't." In the background, I could hear Jessica's voice. "Oops," she said, laughing. "Guess we should count the kids before leaving." They were both laughing. Both of them. Laughing because my child had been abandoned and terrified. "How long have you been home?" I demanded. "About an hour," Margaret said. "We were about to call you." "An hour." My voice cracked. "You left an 8-year-old alone for over an hour, and you think this is funny?" "Oh, do not be so dramatic," Margaret said. "She is fine, is she not?" "No thanks to you," I shouted. A stranger found her crying alone. Anything could have happened to her. "Well, she should have stayed close to us then," Margaret said, as if this was somehow Sophie's fault. That was it. That was the moment I knew I was done. She went to the bathroom. "She is a child. You are the adult." Jessica's voice came through the phone. "Linda, calm down. It was an accident." "Accident," I said coldly. "You did not even check if both kids were in the car." "We checked. Ashley was there. We assumed Sophie was too. And there it was. The truth laid bare. So you only counted to make sure your daughter was safe." Silence. "Stay away from my daughter," I said. "I am done with all of you." "You are overreacting," Margaret started to say. I hung up. David drove fast while I sat in the passenger seat, my hands shaking. When we arrived at the state park, I saw Sophie sitting on a bench with a woman and a man I assumed were Karen and her husband. The moment Sophie saw me, she jumped up and ran. I caught her in my arms as she crashed into me, sobbing into my shoulder. "I am so sorry, baby," I whispered, holding her as tight as I could. "I am so sorry." Karen approached us. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes. "I am Karen," she said. "I found Sophie about 45 minutes ago. She was sitting here crying, so I asked her what was wrong. She told me her family had left without her." David and I both thanked Karen repeatedly. She waved it off. "I have kids too," she said. "I could not just leave her here alone." She gave me her phone number in case we needed a witness to what happened. On the drive home, Sophie sat quietly in the back seat, holding my hand through the gap between the front seats. Her little hand was cold and trembling. "Can you tell me what happened, sweetie?" I asked gently. Sophie took a shaky breath and began to speak. "We got to the park and had lunch," she said. "Then Ashley and I went to play on the playground. After a while, I needed to use the bathroom. I told Grandma and she said, 'Okay, go ahead, be quick.' So I went." She paused, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. "When I came back, everyone was gone. The car was not there anymore. I looked everywhere in the parking lot. I called for Grandma and Grandpa, but nobody answered. I thought maybe they went to buy something and would come back. So I waited at the same spot where we parked." "How long did you wait?" David asked, his voice tight. "I do not know," Sophie said. "It felt like forever. I kept waiting and waiting. Then I started walking around looking for them. I was scared. I did not have a phone. I did not know what to do. I sat down on that bench and I cried. I thought maybe you would come find me, Mom. Or maybe Grandma would come back. But nobody came. Then what happened, I asked, though my heart was breaking. Sophie looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. I thought maybe they did not want me anymore, she whispered. Those words shattered me completely. Oh, baby, no. 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 I turned around as much as the seatbelt would allow and reached back to hold her face in my hands. We want you. We will always want you. This is not your fault. Do you understand me? This is not your fault. But as Sophie nodded, I knew there was more to this story. Over the next few minutes with gentle questions, the whole truth came out. Sophie began telling us things I had never known, things she had kept secret because she thought it was her fault. Every time Sophie stayed over at my parents' house, she had to sleep on the couch while Ashley got the guest bed. When it was dinner time, Margaret would ask Ashley what she wanted to eat, but never asked Sophie. Sophie just ate whatever everyone else chose. When there were cookies or treats, Ashley always got to pick first. Sometimes there was nothing left for Sophie. Jessica often told Sophie how lucky she was to even be there. You should be grateful, she would say, as if my daughter's presence was a burden. Ashley had learned from the adults around her. She would take Sophie's toys and not give them back. Once Ashley told Sophie that she was not as pretty as her, and Aunt Jessica said she was right. Sophie said, her voice small, "Why did you not tell me any of this?" I asked, my heart in pieces. "I thought it would make you sad," Sophie said, "and I thought if I was really good, maybe Grandma would start to like me. I tried really hard, Mom. I was always polite. I always said please and thank you, but it was never enough." David's hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. I could see a muscle working in his jaw. He was furious, and so was I. But more than anger, I felt guilt. How had I let this go on? How had I not seen how badly they were treating my daughter? "None of this is your fault," I told Sophie firmly. "You are perfect exactly as you are. And what they did to you is wrong. All of it. Do you understand? You did nothing wrong." Sophie nodded, but I could see she did not quite believe me yet. That was okay. I would spend however long it took to make sure she knew her worth. That night, after Sophie finally fell asleep in our bed, exhausted from crying David, and I had a conversation. "We need to do something," he said. "We cannot let this go." "I know," I said. "I have been thinking about it all evening." "I am going over there. I am coming with you," David said immediately. We drove to my parents' house. I did not call ahead. I did not ask if it was a good time. I used the spare key they had given me years ago and walked right in. Margaret, George, and Jessica were all sitting in the living room watching television. "We need to talk," I said. "Now." Margaret looked up surprised. "Oh, Linda, you are still upset about today." "Upset?" I felt my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "You abandoned my daughter, and you think I am just upset." Jessica stood up. "It was a mistake. Get over it." I turned to face her directly. "Was it? Because Sophie told me how you all have been treating her for years." Margaret's expression shifted to confusion. "What are you talking about?" I laid it all out, everything Sophie had told us. The sleeping arrangements, the food, the gifts, the cruel comments, the constant message that she was less than, that she did not matter as much as Ashley. "You left an 8-year-old alone in a park because you only care about Ashley," I said. "You only bothered to count one child. You only made sure one child was safe in that car. That is not true," Jessica protested. "Then explain to me why you did not check if Sophie was in the car," David said, speaking for the first time. Nobody had an answer. Margaret tried to defend herself. We love both girls equally. I laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. Equally. When was the last time you asked Sophie what she wanted? When was the last time you bought her something new instead of a hand-me-down? When was the last time you treated her like she mattered? Margaret could not answer. George sat in his chair, staring at the floor, saying nothing. Ashley is my daughter, Jessica said. Of course Mom helps me more. Helping you is one thing, I shot back. Neglecting and hurting Sophie is something else entirely. We did not neglect her, Margaret insisted. We just forgot she was there. You forgot because she does not matter to you, I said, and the words hung in the air like a verdict. Admit it. You remembered Ashley. You counted her. You made sure your favorite grandchild was safe. Sophie was expendable. Margaret's face went pale. That is not fair. What is not fair is what you have done to my daughter for 8 years, I said. Here is what is going to happen. You will never see Sophie again. You cannot do that. Margaret stood up. We are her grandparents. You gave up that right when you left her alone in a park and laughed about it, I said coldly. Linda, you are being ridiculous, Jessica said. David stepped forward. No, she is not. You all are toxic. Sophie does not need people like you in her life. I have spent years making excuses for you, I said to my mother. I kept hoping you would change. I kept bringing Sophie around thinking eventually you would see how special she is. But today showed me the truth. You will never change, and I will not sacrifice my daughter's well-being anymore. Margaret started crying. We are sorry. We made a mistake. We will do better. Too late, I said. You had 8 years to do better. You had 8 years to treat Sophie with the same love and respect you gave Ashley. You chose not to. I pulled out the spare key to their house and placed it on the coffee table. Do not call us. Do not text. Do not come to our house. If you do, I will file a restraining order for harassment. George finally spoke. Linda, please. She is our granddaughter. I looked at my father, the man who had stood by and watched his wife hurt my child for years without saying a word. Then you should have treated her like one, I said. David and I walked out. We did not look back. The next week, I made an appointment with a family lawyer. I needed to know what rights my parents had regarding Sophie. I needed to know if they could legally force visitation. The lawyer listened to my story and reviewed the evidence I brought. I had screenshots of the text messages, including my mother's message that said, "Forgot her LOL." I had Karen's contact information and her willingness to testify about finding Sophie alone and afraid. I even had a small journal Sophie had kept where she wrote about feeling sad at Grandma's house. The lawyer was straightforward. Grandparents can petition for visitation rights in Ohio, she said, but given the evidence of neglect and the emotional harm caused, a judge would likely deny any request, especially with the child's own testimony about how she feels unsafe around them. That gave me some peace of mind. I also changed our home security system and added cameras. If my parents showed up, I would have proof. They tried. Oh, how they tried. Margaret called every single day for the first week. I did not answer. I blocked her number. She sent letters in the mail, long handwritten letters begging for another chance. Please let us see Sophie. We miss her. We made a mistake. We are sorry. I did not respond to a single one. She showed up at our house twice. The first time I did not answer the door. I watched through the camera as she stood there for 20 minutes knocking and calling my name. The second time she left wrapped presents on the porch. I donated them to charity without opening them. Jessica tried a different approach. She sent emails. Linda, you are tearing this family apart. Mom is devastated. Dad barely speaks anymore. Ashley keeps asking where Sophie is. You need to forgive us and move on. I replied exactly once. I wrote back, you tore this family apart when you left my daughter behind and laughed about it. What you are feeling now is called consequences. As the weeks went by, something interesting started happening. Margaret and Jessica began to realize what they had lost. Karen, the woman who found Sophie, lived in the same neighborhood as my parents. Word got around about what happened. Karen was not shy about telling people the truth when they asked why they never saw Sophie anymore. Neighbors started looking at Margaret differently. Friends asked uncomfortable questions. How could you forget a child? Did you really leave her alone for over an hour? Margaret felt the judgment everywhere she went. George felt the shame too, though he had barely said a word during the whole ordeal. Jessica had to explain to Ashley why Sophie was not around anymore. Ashley, who was getting older and starting to understand things better, asked difficult questions. Did we really leave her alone? Mom, was she scared? Why did we not check if she was in the car? Jessica had no good answers. Life without my parents and sister was different. At first, Sophie was confused. Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at me? She asked. No, baby, I assured her. They made bad choices. Grown-ups have to face consequences for bad choices, just like kids do. They hurt you, and it is my job to protect you. So we are not going to see them anymore. Is it because of what happened at the park? That and a lot of other things, I said honestly. They did not treat you the way you deserve to be treated. And I should have stopped it a long time ago. I am sorry I did not. As time passed, Sophie began to change. Without the constant message that she was not good enough, not as pretty, not as important, my daughter blossomed. She smiled more. She spoke up more. She stopped trying so hard to please everyone. She became confident in who she was. We started going to family therapy. A counselor helped Sophie understand that none of what happened was her fault. Children often blame themselves when adults behave badly, the therapist explained to me. Sophie needs to hear over and over that she is worthy of love and that the problem was never with her. David became even more intentional about being the best father he could be. He started a tradition of one-on-one time with Sophie every week. They would go get ice cream or see a movie or just walk around the park and talk. He made sure Sophie knew that her voice mattered, that her feelings were valid, that she was cherished. For Sophie's 9th birthday, we threw the biggest party she had ever had. We invited all her school friends. We had decorations, games, and a huge cake. Sophie's face glowed with happiness all day. Mom, this is the best birthday ever, she said, hugging me tight. That was when I knew we had made the right choice. 5 years passed. Sophie turned 13. She was in middle school, thriving academically and socially. The scared, sad little girl who thought she was not good enough had grown into a confident young woman. That was when the letters started coming again. This time they were different. Margaret wrote a long letter acknowledging what she had done. I was wrong, she wrote. I favored Jessica and Ashley for years. I treated Sophie like she was less important, and I see now how much I hurt her. I am deeply sorry. George sent his own letter. I should have stood up for Sophie. I should have told Margaret she was being unfair. I failed as a grandfather, and I regret it every day. Even Jessica wrote. I was jealous of you, Linda. Jealous that you had your life together while mine fell apart. I let that jealousy hurt Sophie, and I will never forgive myself. Please, can we try to repair this? I sat with those letters for a long time. Then I brought them to Sophie. She was 13 now, old enough to have a say in her own life. "These are from Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt Jessica," I said. "They are apologizing for what they did. They want to see you again, but this is your choice. I will support whatever you decide." Sophie read the letters carefully. When she finished, she looked up at me with wise eyes. "I do not need them anymore, Mom," she said simply. "I used to think something was wrong with me because they did not love me like they loved Ashley. But you and Dad taught me that I am enough exactly as I am. I do not need people in my life who make me feel small." "Are you sure?" I asked. "Because if you want to see them even just once, I will go with you." Sophie shook her head. "I am sure. I am happy with our family the way it is." And that was that. Now looking back from the perspective of being 52 years old, I can say with certainty that cutting off my parents and sister was the best decision I ever made for my daughter. Sophie is 25 now. She works as a social worker helping children who have been neglected or abused. She says that her own experience taught her how important it is to protect vulnerable kids. Sophie is strong, confident, and kind. She has healthy relationships and knows her worth. The little girl who once thought she was not good enough has grown into a woman who knows exactly how valuable she is. My mother, Margaret, passed away 2 years ago. She never got to see Sophie again. She sent cards every year on Sophie's birthday, but Sophie chose not to open them. When Margaret died, Sophie did not attend the funeral. I did not blame her. George is still alive. He sends a letter every year, always apologizing, always hoping for reconciliation. Sophie does not respond, but she does not hold anger either. She has simply moved on. Jessica tried to reconnect multiple times over the years. When Ashley turned 18, she reached out to Sophie herself. Ashley had grown up and realized how wrong her mother and grandmother had been. She wanted to apologize for her own behavior as a child. Sophie met with Ashley once, had coffee, accepted her apology, but made it clear she was not interested in building a relationship. Ashley understood. As for David and me, we are still together, still in love, still proud of the daughter we raised. Our marriage grew stronger through this challenge. We learned that protecting your child sometimes means making hard choices that other people will not understand. I learned that family is not always safe. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt your child, even if they share your blood. For years, I thought I had to maintain the relationship with my parents because they were family. I thought I had to keep trying, keep hoping they would change, keep exposing Sophie to their cruelty in the name of family unity. I was wrong. The day my mother laughed and said she forgot my daughter was the day I finally understood that my first responsibility was not to my parents or my sister. It was to my child. It was to protect Sophie's tender heart from people who saw her as less than. Some people have criticized my choice over the years. Family members, distant relatives, even some friends have said I was too harsh. She is your mother, they say. Everyone makes mistakes. You should forgive. But here is what they do not understand. Forgiveness does not mean allowing toxic people back into your life. I have forgiven my mother and sister in the sense that I no longer carry anger toward them. I do not wish them harm. I simply do not allow them access to my daughter. There is a difference between forgiving someone and trusting them again. There is a difference between letting go of bitterness and opening the door to more hurt. Sophie deserved better. She deserved grandparents who loved her as much as they loved her cousin. She deserved an aunt who treated her kindly. She deserved adults who would never, ever leave her alone in a park and laugh about it. When they proved they could not give her that, I removed them from her life, and I do not regret it for a single second. I see now that favoritism in families creates wounds that last for generations. Children know when they are not loved the same way as their siblings or cousins. They feel it in every unequal gift, every biased comment, every moment when someone else is chosen over them. Margaret thought she was just helping Jessica more because Jessica needed it. But what she was actually doing was telling Sophie that she did not matter as much, that she was not as valuable, that she was forgettable. And on that terrible day at the state park, my mother proved it. She proved that Sophie was so unimportant to her that she did not even bother to count heads before driving away. She cared enough to make sure Ashley was safe. Sophie was an afterthought. That is not love. That is neglect dressed up in the language of family. I hope my story reaches parents and grandparents who are playing favorites right now. I hope it makes them stop and think about the child they are pushing aside. Because that child will remember. That child will carry the wound of not being chosen, of not being valued for the rest of their life. And I hope my story reaches parents who are watching their own children being treated this way by family members. I want you to know that it is okay to walk away. It is okay to protect your child even from people you love. Your child's emotional safety matters more than maintaining relationships with people who hurt them. That day when my mother laughed and said she forgot my daughter, she thought it was funny. She thought I would get over it. She had no idea that it was the moment I finally saw her clearly. It was the moment I stopped making excuses. It stopped hoping she would change. It was the moment I chose my daughter over my desire to have a happy, intact family. And it was the moment everything changed. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of pure, fierce love for your child. Out of a refusal to let them grow up thinking they are not enough. Out of a determination to protect their beautiful, tender heart from people who cannot see how precious they are. My daughter knows she is loved now. She knows she is valuable. She knows that no one, not even family, has the right to make her feel small. And that is worth every difficult conversation, every severed relationship, every person who thinks I overreacted. Because at the end of the day, I have to look my daughter in the eye and know that I did everything I could to protect her. And I can. I did. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. So I want to ask you watching this. Have you ever had to make a choice between family loyalty and protecting your child? Have you ever had to walk away from people you loved because they were hurting someone you loved more? Drop a comment below and share your story. You are not alone. And if my story helped you in any way, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real-life stories like this one, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we need permission to put our children first, even when it costs us something. I am giving you that permission right now. Your child's well-being matters more than keeping the peace with people who do not treat them right. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gives you courage if you need it. I hope it reminds you that you are not wrong for protecting your child. And I hope you know that choosing your child over toxic family is not cruelty. It is love in its purest form. Take care of yourselves and your little ones. They are counting on you to keep them safe, even from the people who are supposed to love them most.